Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Hope you guys are all doing fine. I actually went on a small vacation and I am back now. And today we are going to be sewing these two-piece sets. I'll be sewing the trouser first before we would sew the t-shirt. So for the trouser, I've placed my fabric on fold like so, and I just pin it down as you can see. So the length of the fabric, the width of the fabric is your hip measurement divided by 4, and then maybe you add like 4 inches extra to it. While the length of it is dependent on how long you want the trouser to be. Mine is 43 inches plus extra 2 inches for hemming allowance. I've also gone ahead to mark about 1.5 inches away from the edge of the fabric, and I drew a straight line from the top of the fabric all the way down like so. And then after that, the next thing we are going to do is on that edge of the fabric, I've also gone ahead to draw a straight line which is half an inch from the edge like this. I'll be using this as the allowance for this trouser. So when you're done with that, the next thing you're going to be doing is to mark your measurements. So we are going to be using a band of about 1.25 inches long band. So I'm going to be marking our taking our measuring from that 1.25 inches like you see me do. Just pay attention to how I'm placing my measuring tape. I'm placing it at 1.25 inches from the line that we drew, which is the waistline. From that waistline, I'm going to be marking all the way down. So I'm marking 8.5 inches to be my hip line measurements. So you draw it, you mark it and you draw a straight line. And then for the crotch line, I'm using 11.5 inches for the crotch line. My crotch is 11 inches plus half an inch to make it free. And then I've also gone ahead to mark my knee measurement, which is 22 inches. And then from that point, you mark the length of the trouser. Mine is 43 inches, like I said earlier. So after marking all these lines, the next thing we're going to be doing is to mark quarter of your hip measurements on the hip line, and then you can also mark that on the waistline up there. So after marking it, you're going to connect it using a straight rule like so. I hope this is visible. You can connect it all the way to the crotch line. So after that, on the crotch line, I'm going to be dividing my thigh measurement by 2. My thigh measurement is 23. I'll add 1 inches to it for ease, that it will be 24 inches. So I'm dividing 24 by 2 and I'm marking the 12 inches right there. So after marking the 12 inches, from this point, I'll just go out by 0.5 inches. So from the hip line, I'll connect it all the way down to the crotch line like so. So after connecting it, so the next thing we're going to do is from that point, I'm going to be marking my waistline measurement. So I'll divide my waistline by 4 and I'll mark it there. I'm using 6.5 inches. I'm using 6.5 inches. So from that 6.5, I'm just going to connect it all the way to my hip line measurement. The next thing now, on the knee line, I'm going to be marking half of my thigh measurement also on the knee line, and then I'll divide it by 2, which is 6 inches. And then from that 6 inches point, I'm going to be marking half of my knee measurements, which is 10 inches. So I'm going to be dividing that 10 inches by 2 in between the 6 in between the middle point of the trouser. So I'll mark 5 inches on the left side and 5 inches on the right side. So after that, I'm just going to connect so from there also I'm going to repeat the same process on the length of the trouser. So I'll mark the 12 inches, which is my thigh measurement. That is half of my thigh measurement. I'll divide that 12 inches by 2. And then here, I'm going to be marking, instead of the 5 inches, I'll just reduce it by half an inch. So I'm marking 4.5 inches on both sides, just to slim the trouser a little bit. You can connect it straight if you want to. I just want it to be a little bit fitted. So I'll use my ruler to connect it all the way down, and that'll be it. So from here, we are basically done with the drafting of the front pattern. All you have to do is just cut it off, adding 1 inch sewing allowance to the side seam, and then half an inch sewing allowance to the crotch line points. So the next thing now is to draft the back of this trouser. So I place the front pattern on the back fabric. I also place the back fabric on fold like so. The only difference is that the back fabric is wider and longer than the front fabric. So it's about 2 inches longer, and then it's about also 2 inches wider or more. So from here, I'm just going to be marking 2 inches away from the crotch line, and then also from the hip line, from the knee line, I'll go out by 2 inches, and then down below, I'll go out by 2 inches. Then after that, I'll just connect it using a straight rule like so. The reason why we are doing this is because the back side is bigger than the front, and so we need to add this extra allowance so that it will be well placed on our body by the time we are done. So just use a French curve and connect it all the way to the crotch line. Then you can extend the crotch line like so. And then from this point now, I'm also going to be marking 2 inches from the front pattern. That is, when I mark 2 inches, I just connect it all the way down to the crotch line like so. So just make sure you curve it very well and connect it to that point. We're going to be cutting it off. Just make sure you notch the knee line, the crotch line, and the hip line for both the back and the front, so that by the time you're joining it, it will be easy for you to know exactly where to place the front and the back, so that they'll be equal. And then also from here, we're also going to extend the back by 1 inches from that point, and then you connect it to the waistline and you cut it off like so. Remember to notch the side seam of the back to the side seam of the front, so that you know exactly where to place it when you are cutting, when you are sewing. So now I'm gonna head to close the crotch line for the front and for the back like so, using the allowance that we left, which is half an inch sewing allowance. So after closing the crotch line, the next thing we're going to do is to close the down part of the trouser, that is this point. So I'm going to make sure that I align the front and the back at the middle all the way down. Please, one important point to consider when sewing trouser is that the lines must be straight. And then from here, the next thing is to sew the side seam. Before you sew the side seam, just take the measurements for the waist. Make sure that what you are using is exactly what your waist measurement is supposed to be. Then you sew it using the allowance that is remaining after you take your waist measurement. So from here, I'm also gonna have to cut a piece of fabric that is longer than my waist measurement. So I'll just join both sides together. Remember, take notes that I added interfacing to it. So I'll sew using half an inch sewing allowance. The length of the waistband is about 2.5 inches long. And then when you join it and you turn it to the right side, this is what it should look like. So now you're just going to be placing it right side facing each other, and you join it to the waistline of the trouser. So after joining, this is what it should look like. And at this point, you can also go ahead to hem the down part of the trouser. And take note that when I joined the side seam at the right side, I joined it all the way to the crotch line. I do not join all the way to the hip line, so that I'll be able to add the zipper allowance to it. So at this point, the next thing is to just close that point like so. So just fold in the 1/2 inch sewing allowance. You pin it down. You can even go ahead to hand stitch it first before sewing on the machine, so that it will be easy for you when you are sewing. It will not be shaky. So when you're done with that, the next thing now is to join the invincible zipper to this trouser. So the remaining allowance that we have for the waistline, use it as a zipper allowance and then attach the zip to it. And that'll be all for the trouser. So for the t-shirt now, I've gone ahead to place it. I'll be using this pattern paper for the t-shirts. You can draft it directly on the fabric if you want, but it's quite difficult to work with doing it directly from the fabric. That's why I decided to use the pattern paper. So now the length and width of the paper is dependent on your body size. So from here, I'll just go ahead and mark 2 inches inward from the edge of the fabric, from the edge of the paper, I mean to say. And then when you mark that 2 inches, you're just going to fold it inward like this. These 2 inches will be the button allowance for the t-shirt. Just make sure that you're folding it 2 inches inward. By the time you're done folding, you can confirm it with your tape rule, and if it is correct, now the next thing is to mark 1/2 inch from that point all the way down, and then you connect it using your ruler. So after that, the next thing now, we're going to be marking our chest line measurements. That is our armhole measurements. Mine is 8 inches. If you don't know yours, but you know your bust line, just minus 2 inches from your bust line, and that will be your chest line measurements. You can even go down or use your chest line measurements for this. That is your bust line measurements for this, if you really want it to be free, you know. So after that, I'm going to be marking half of my shoulder measurements. I added 1/2 inch to it so that it will be free, and then I'll mark it also at the chest line point and connect using a straight rule. So from this point, I'll go down by 2 inches because of it's a t-shirt, and then I'll connect it all the way down to the other point like so. So irrespective of your body size, if you do the same thing, you will get amazing results. So from here, I'm just going to be marking 1/4 of my bust measurements, and I'll add 1/2 inch to it. You can add 1 inch to it as well, just for ease. How big, just depends on how big you want the t-shirt to be. You can add half. You can, like the one on the intro video is, I think, is 1 inch they used. At this point, you can mark the length of the t-shirt that you want. For the intro video, the length of the t-shirt is way shorter than mine and more freer than mine. So all of this is dependent on how you want it to be. So you mark your 1/4 of your bust measurement plus the 1/2 inch allowance also on your waistline, and you connect, you drawing a straight line to the chest line. And then from this point also, you can add your sewing allowance to it, the hemming allowance alongside the sewing allowance. And then when you're done with this, you just cut it off. And that will be for the front. So for the back now, I'm just going to be placing the front on the back pattern like so. The back is supposed to be longer than the front by about 3 inches or more. You know, just make sure it's not less than 3 inches longer than the front. So when you're done, you're just going to pin it down. Take note how I'm placing the front pattern. I place it 1/2 inch away from the back. So from this point now, I will mark 2.5 inches upward. That is, the back shoulder line will be 2.5 inches higher than the front shoulder line. And the reason is also because it's a t-shirt. Doing this is going to enable the t-shirt to be well balanced on your body by the time you're done sewing it. So I'll just connect it drawing a straight line, and this will be the shoulder line. So from this point, you can just go ahead and cut it off. So So after this, I'm just going to be going in by half an inch from that shoulder line on the front. So just mark half an inch all the way to the other side. And then now I'm just going to be folding the back to the front like so, aligning the shoulder of the back to the half an inch point on the front like so. So when you're done with this, you can just trace out that line, that straight line at the armhole area. You trace it out, and then from here we're going to be marking the neck width and the neck depth. So I'm using 2.5 inches for the neck width, and then the neck depth I'm using 2.75 inches. So you can use 2.5 inches on both sides. You can use 3 inches. Don't make it too wide. That's the most important thing, just depending on your body size. Okay, so from here use your French curve and connect it, and then you can use your free hand to just connect it as I'm doing now. So you just slant it a little bit, and then now you're going to be cutting. But when you're cutting, don't cut, just pay attention to how I'm cutting it for the back and for the front as well. So this is what we are going to have by the time we are done. So you can go ahead to cut off the armhole as well, and by the time you open it up, this is what it should look like. For the back, if you notice the neckline is not very straight, so just make it straight a little bit by removing that excess at that point. And then this is what we have, and that will be all for the back and for the front. So now just place it on the fabric and cut. When you're cutting, please, I made a mistake by not adding sewing allowance to the neckline for this top. If you are cutting yours, please add sewing allowance to the neckline. I think it will be more better when you do it that way. The neckline will not be too big for you, because at the end of the day I felt the neckline was too big for me. So it just depends on your choice though, but if you can't, please add allowance to the neckline. So when you're done cutting and you open it up, this is what it should look like. For the front, we have the 2 inches extra for these buttons. So now I'm going ahead to take it to the pressing iron, and I fold half 1 inch inward, and then I also folded it further. That is 2 inches gone. So I'll just take it to my sewing machine and I'll sew it down like that using 1 inch sewing allowance. So by the time you're done sewing, this is what it should look like. Very clean. Okay, so when you place it on one on the other, it should look like this. So at this point you can go ahead and pin it down just to secure it in place, and then you can also go ahead to add the buttonhole on one part of the possibly the right part of the t-shirts. And then when you're done adding the buttonhole, you can pin it down, and then from here you can join the shoulder of the front to the shoulder of the back. So after joining the shoulder together, this is what it should look like. And at this point I pin down the side seam so that it will just be in place and not be moving about. And then now I'm just measuring the neckline of the top from the front all the way to the back and then to the front again. So I got 21 inches. Like I said, the neckline is really big. It's supposed to be less than 21 inches if you add allowance. So now here's a piece of paper that I'll be using to draft the collar for this t-shirt. So I'm gonna have to draw a straight line, and then from this straight line I'm dividing that what I got from the neckline measurements that I just measured. That is 21 divided by 2 is 10.5. So I'm marking 10.5 here, and I'm drawing a straight line. So from this point I'll go in by 1 inch on both sides, and I'll just connect it like so. So after marking the 1 inch, and then you can just go ahead and curve it as I'm doing now. A little curve is okay. So from that 1 inch point, you can go ahead and also mark extra 2.5 inches upward. And then while here, you go in by 1 inch and you connect it like so. And then on the other side, you can go in by 2 inches instead of the 2.5 that we went for the other side. You go in by 2 inches and then you connect so that you'll be able to form that slant that we usually have at the collar of the t-shirt. So this is what we have by the time we are done cutting it off. So you place it on the fabric and you cut. You're going to be cutting that point to unfold. By the other part, you're going to add half an inch sewing allowance to it. So I've cut 2 pieces, one for the lining and one for the main fabric. So the main fabric, I'll be adding interfacing to it so that it will be stiff a little bit. So when you're done adding the interfacing, you can join the back and the front, the lining to the fabric like so, and then you sew using half an inch sewing allowance. And then when you sew, please notch it very well. If you don't notch it, you'll not be able to turn it to the right side. So notch it and then turn it to the right side. So after you turn it to the right side, you're going to be joining the main fabric to the neckline at the right side. So you just join it using half an inch sewing allowance as I'm showing you now. Because I do not add any allowance to the neckline, I'm using less than half an inch sewing allowance because I don't want the neckline to be bigger than it's supposed to be. So take notes, I use like 0.25 inch allowance. But if you added seam allowance, you can use half an inch sewing allowance to it. So when you're done sewing it, you turn it to the wrong side like so, and then you fold it in. Just pay attention to how I'm doing it. I think it's very self-explanatory. So just fold in the allowance, pin it down and sew. Please, before you sew it on the sewing machine, use hand stitch it first so that it will be easy for you when you are sewing it on the sewing machine. Hand stitch it, sew it on the sewing machine, and then you can cut off the thread from the hand stitching method that you did earlier. So by the time you're done, this is what you should have. This is a very clean job. Everything is well placed. So now I'm just going to be adding the basic sleeve to this t-shirt. So in case you don't know how to cut a basic sleeve, I have a video here on my channel showing how to cut a basic sleeve. So all you have to do now is just join the basic sleeve to it like so. You turn it to the wrong side and then you sew from the down part of the t-shirt all the way down to the sleeve like so. Make sure that everywhere is aligned. The neatness of your job is based on alignment as well. So after joining it, you can hem the down part as well by the time you're done joining the both side. And that'll be all for this video. Just go ahead and attach your buttons to it and you are done. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one.